Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alumni Chats, a weekly podcast featuring alumni from the Department of Broadcasting and Journalism at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm also the interim dean for the College of Fine Arts and Communication. Today, I'm talking with Jay Spencer from the class of 1992. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Hi, Buzz. Thanks for having me.
Man, 1992, I had just been started 1 year into the job. And so you were an undergraduate student at that period of time. And I don't know, I think I remember you going to Quincy, but it's been a long time.
Right. Well, I didn't go to Quincy until 94.
Right. You came back for graduate school.
I came back. Yeah. I graduated originally in 92 and then did radio for a number of suburban Chicago stations for a while in that area. And then afterwards decided it wasn't quite what I wanted to be doing. I was kind of tired of being underpaid and overworked, basically. So I ended up coming back to grad school. And that lasted for just short of a full semester, really. And Les Sachs, who was then the news director at WGEM down in Quincy, found me. I think we actually literally bumped into each other in the hallway at Sully Hall somehow. And he was a listener of public radio, or at least if my understanding was he had heard me because I was doing mornings at WIUM at that point. And he asked me, he said, do you have any plans after graduation? And I said, I've still got a little ways to go. I was only, a semester into graduate school at that point. And I said, but no, I really haven't given it a whole lot of thought. And he said, well, why don't you come down and have lunch with me one afternoon? Let's talk, So I went down the following week and he pretty much offered me his 5 o'clock producer job. And, and I tried to explain, I was completely blown away. I really wasn't expecting anything, and I told him, I said, you understand, I've never taken a television course. I said, my undergraduate was exclusively radio at Western. I mean, it had nothing to do with television. I really didn't have any interest in it, honestly. And he said, no, he says, it's not important. And I kind of thought that was kind of strange. He said, you can write. He said, and you know how to put together a story. He said, I can teach you the rest. So I thought, okay, no problem, So he basically offered me the 5 p.m. producer role. And the following week, I was, I started at WGEM while I was taking finals basically at Western that semester. And that was my brief foray into graduate school, basically. It was kind of a stepping stone into television, and that was it.
Yeah. And a long and illustrious career it's been. We're going to talk more about all the journey that you have had, but let's give everybody a life update. Where are you at and what's going on? What's your job right now? Because if people are looking behind you, they may have an idea.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind 3 months, basically. My entire life has essentially been turned upside down, all for the better, mind you. But I am coming off a 15-year stint as a producer for the Home Shopping Network in St. Petersburg, Florida. And out of the blue, happened to find an opening for my current role here at AccuWeather in State College, Pennsylvania. I am the new senior broadcast producer for AccuWeather. This is obviously primarily a weather operation. We supply weather forecasting information for, radio, television stations all over the world, businesses we do as well, major businesses. But it's a blossoming television operation as well. I mean, obviously, like I said, we've done the radio broadcasts for years because I've worked for, radio stations early on in my career that were AccuWeather subscribers. So I always remember, calling in the mornings to getting the pre-recorded forecast information and all that kind of stuff. But now we are actually doing our own live television programming, and it's very promising and very award-winning operation. Actually, we were just last week awarded, I think, 2 CableFax awards most recently, and so it's a very promising operation here.
Well, that's exciting. I'm very happy to find out more about that. But we're going to go back and talk about the origins of Jay Spencer, because I like to see what the origin story is, because you're from the Western Chicago suburbs, and right. And I like to try to find out what kind of things you like to do. What do you think was sort of influencers on your young life that may have guided you along the way, whether it's family or community, friends? What kind of things did you like to do that maybe influenced and shaped you into who you are now?
I think I was pretty much your average kid. I didn't think I did anything all that, out of the ordinary. I grew up, played sports. I played, football. I ran track in high school, all that kind of stuff. Graduated, high school in, like you said, in the western suburbs, out in the middle of the cornfields, basically. And, decided originally I went to Western on a music scholarship. I was a classically trained violinist from the time I was 4 years old. Went to school as on a music scholarship, and knew going in to Western that I wanted to have some sort of involvement in radio. I knew I was going to be a communications major. Music was just a minor. It was a side gig, basically. I went in and I thought, yeah, I'll get involved, somehow with radio, and ended up volunteering for WIUS and started out as a jock there. And I don't even know that I made it through the first year. And Dory Valillo, who was then the general manager at WIUM just upstairs in Memorial Hall, came down and said, I've got a position open for a classical music announcer slot. She's like, and I understand you've got quite an extensive background in classical music and stuff. And she asked me, she's like, if you're interested, she's like, we'll put you to work. And I thought, great, no problem, And so that was my start at WIUM. And honestly, I walked in day one. And I can't remember what exactly was going on, but there was something going on in Macomb that was kind of an all hands on deck type situation where the news department, Bill Wheelhouse, was going crazy. I mean, as he normally does, but he was running circles, and they needed an extra body, and I was basically there. So I got pulled into the newsroom, and that was the last time I saw the music library for probably 6 months. And, by the end of that time, I was already reporting for WIUM. And I think by my second year, I was regularly filling in for Morning Edition in the area. So that was, my involvement at Western, because I spent, the rest of my time, working for WIUM and anchoring. And I had the chance to, I was the stage manager for Rural Route 3, which was a program that was in national syndication or distribution, I guess, over NPR. So I got my first real production credit, doing something there as well with the late great Jeff Holtz and and the rest of that crew. And learned a tremendous amount. So it was a really good 3.5, 4 years that I spent at Western as an undergrad. I walked out of there thinking, this is it. I'm going to do radio for the rest of my life. And 2 years later, lo and behold, I come back and I'm in TV.
Well, that's what's, already sort of interesting about your story is that, well, first of all, I did not know you had that music background. And so I just curious, did you ever continue? Do you still have any interest in that?
Performance-wise, my performance days are over. Unfortunately, because of a car accident I was involved in several years ago, which seriously damaged my left arm. I have nerve damage, and stuff. So it prohibits me from being able to play much. I can play for a couple of minutes and I start to lose feeling in my hand and stuff like that. So it kind of cut my music career short, I guess, if you will. But I really wasn't. I wasn't driven to pursue it much beyond college. To me, it was a means to an end. It kind of paid my way through college, at least for the first couple of years, until because by my sophomore year, WIUM was essentially paying me in grants and waivers and stuff to the point where I no longer had a need for the music scholarship, and I was already being drawn in another direction anyways. So I essentially changed my minor and renounced my music scholarship, basically turned it down.
And the other thing that's remarkable is that you kept having these encounters with people that gave you an opportunity, whether, it was Dory trying to get you connected with WIUM and then also Bill with the news. But eventually, as you talked about Les Sachs, and you encounter that meeting, and that also opens up another door for you. And it's kind of remarkable that you've had, and you're always open to these different opportunities.
Well, and that's the thing that's so important about a business like this is you've got to be willing to network with people and make connections and meet people and keep your mind open, to new ideas and new opportunities and stuff. And don't just, be single-minded and say, I'm going in this direction and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I mean, you've got to be able to, especially at that age, because had I known, when I was in my early 20s that I was going to end up where I'm at now, I'd have looked at you and thought, oh, you gotta be crazy. There's no way. It's really weird in a good sense how, your life develops over time, and especially if you're, like I said, willing to keep an open mind about things and entertain all the possibilities.
Let me ask you, Jay, do you have a favorite memory or place or thing that you like to do in Macomb while you're a student? Kind of, I'm opening up the box here to say.
I was gonna say I wasn't quite the choir boy of a student. I'll be the first one to admit. When I was there, I was a little bit of a hellraiser, and I kept a pretty close circle of fellow cohorts like Mark Newtbar and Tim Crowley and some of the others. We were known to stir things up every now and again. So yeah, we were college students, we did the normal things. We went to the bars, we went to, the ball games, all that kind of stuff. But it was part of the experience.
Yes,
at least back then it was, and that's what was so essential to, I think, our development as productive adults, which is scary to consider, really. But it definitely is. It's a part of growing up. It really is.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about Mark Newtbar and Tim Abshire and Laura, and we could just go on and on about how many of you, that were together have gone on to very successful careers. And I don't know if that was sort of this, that feeling at all back then. But there was.
I don't consider, well, and we came from a pretty impressive class. I'm not gonna lie there. There were a lot of people that went on to do some pretty good things. But I don't think any of us really, gave it much thought back then. We were just, going to school and having fun,
Yeah.
we were being kids. And that's, it's just part of growing up.
So, I'm trying to imagine who other faculty, other students that you may have remembered from your undergraduate times. Sharon Evans was probably the director, and
Sharon was the head of the department. And surprisingly enough, I really didn't have a lot of dealings with Sharon until I came back to graduate school.
Okay.
I think, we obviously, I don't know if she knew me back then, but I obviously knew who she was. But, but I think primarily because I really didn't have much of an interest in television. I never really had much of a reason to cross paths with her as an undergrad.
Right.
Now, like I said, different story. When I came back, for graduate school, it was, a whole different story. And I loved the time that we spent together, Roger Sadler was actually, I think when I was an undergrad, I'm not sure if it was my freshman or sophomore year. I think Roger was brand new at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and obviously with the radio background that he had, we just kind of clicked, and I loved his classes and loved talking with him and learning from him, all those and sharing ideas and just, kind of hashing things out was always a great fun. His first, well, I don't know if it was his first big production, but one of the first big productions that I remember in the department was when they created Macomb Magazine.
Yep.
And I'm trying to remember because, gosh, you're talking about going way back. I can't remember if I was the host or the producer of that show at that time. I was one or the other. I think I was the host, actually. I think Angie Morawski and I think it's Angie Rojek now. I think she and I were the two original hosts, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure she'd be more than willing to correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, we had a good time with it. And it was, I didn't really, outside of that, I don't think I really did a lot of television type productions while I was there, though.
It's interesting. So you and I always appreciated WIUM and the ability for that, which is just a professional operation as it has been run for years and years. But
Mhm.
the kind of mentorship that the people over there that would provide to our students. In terms of, especially if you got involved with news and you had to interact with the public, it was real good training for a young person to understand and start to get connected with people within the community.
Yeah, I mean, WIUM was opened so many doors, unquestionably. I mean, I basically cut my teeth there very early on, and I had no idea of what I was doing when I walked in there, especially when they put me into work in the news department. I mean, that was the last thing I ever imagined I'd be doing. And, lo and behold, 30 plus years later, it's pretty much taken me all over the country. So, it's a tremendous opportunity for any student that, is offered a position there to, I mean, definitely get their foot in the door and get some, real experience.
So when you graduated in 92, as you've kind of already said, you went to the back up towards Chicago, worked in some radio.
Right.
Did you think, and you must have thought when you left here, I'm starting my career, I'll be in radio for the next 30 years. And
no,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's a good lesson for a young person to know. You may have a different thing that what you've got planned.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, I got out, basically 92, left with my hair on fire, thinking I was going to be, the end all be all, have this great radio career and be set for life, basically. And 2 years later, I was tired of, barely paying the rent every month. And,
right.
And I was just like, there's got to be something more than this. I mean, it's just, it was just so hard to believe that, I was having to, pinch pennies left and right just to, pay basic necessities. And I was like, I got to do something else. So, I mean, and not that television's a whole lot better, but, it does eventually pan out if you stick with it. So, I mean, I ended up back in grad school, but, it's interesting how life, real world experiences give you a different take on things. That's for sure. I mean, because like I said, I never in my wildest dreams figured I'd end up in television, especially for 30 plus years.
Yeah. And then I want people, hopefully our undergraduate students to have some understanding that as you reflect back and even look back at taking that job at WGM as a producer, you were kind of, I say it's like putting things into your tool belt. You're learning different things that are going to help you grow that you eventually use along the way. So let's talk about early days as a producer. What are you learning about that you think that you took into your career and put in your tool belt?
Well, I think, obviously the experience that I picked up at WIUM, learning how to write, how to create a story, how to craft a story, what elements I needed to put together a story and do it well, definitely paid off at WGM. And it just furthered, my experiences just continued to grow while I was in Quincy, because obviously there I was learning the video elements, I mean, learning what it takes to build a solid newscast, things like stacking a show, the elements needed, how to vary your pacing, writing, obviously, my writing became much shorter, more concise while I was in Quincy, because obviously, television is totally different than writing for public radio, which tends to be a little bit longer form and a little bit more, I don't want to say proper, but I guess, it's a little bit more explanatory and drawn out. So, when you've got to write a 20-second VO for, television, you got to, really get the who, what, where, why, how, crammed in there as well as you can. So you learn how to tighten up your style, basically. So it definitely, was one more thing that I put in my tool belt there before moving on to my next place.
And you start to have as I've looked over your career, and you start to have different jobs at different, markets. as you're moving around. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of networking, finding people, making your way across the country as you move up and to different markets, how important it is for other people to know what you can do?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you've kind of got to be your own publicist, basically, your own agent in some respects, and being able to sell yourself. Having a good reel obviously is key. I mean, you save stuff just, like nobody's business. I used to have boxes and boxes of tape, for going back years and years and years, both audio and video, so it's ridiculous. My wife laughs now because we were just cleaning out our garage not too long ago, and she found a couple boxes and she's like, "What is all this stuff?" And I told her, I say, "I can't explain it all, in any form that you're going to understand." I was like, "But just trust me, it's important. I need this stuff." And then she brought up a good point. She's like, "A lot of this stuff is on like VHS and beta." She's like, "Do they even still use those?" I said, "No, that's the problem. I can't watch any of it anymore." So
you've outlived the technology, Jay.
Yeah, I have, and that's the scary thing, now, because I've been, in my current role at AccuWeather, I'm back in almost to the point where I'm doing almost a daily newscast, so to speak. My previous role at HSN as a producer, HSN, just to give you a quick synopsis of it, our presentations are almost entirely unscripted. Show hosts would go on the air and they have a stack of either blue or gray stock, like cardboard type cards. And those come from the product and information department. And it's every individual item that's airing in a given hour or in a given show. And all it has is key selling points, price, how many installments, features, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And the hosts basically make it up as they go. There is no teleprompter for them to read, nothing like that. Totally different here not totally different. AccuWeather, because the forecasters do their own forecast. I'm not a meteorologist and I make no claim about it. I'm actually probably far from being the smartest guy in the room when it comes to the people that I work with.
They're smart. Meteorologists are smart.
Oh man, it just blows you away, and just about everyone there that's not on the television end of it is a meteorologist. So, there's days, I'll be sitting in a conversation, I feel like I'm about that big, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna, sit back in the corner here and listen. But it's interesting in that respect, because I'm learning now too. I'm learning about stuff that I would have never considered, But at the same rate, when they want to do something on television, all of a sudden you're the guy with a plan. They come to you, somebody's like, "Okay, how do we do this?" And you're like, "Okay, well, what if?" So there's the scripting element of it from my standpoint and the execution where I've got to say, "Okay, let's do X, Y, and Z," and we can pull this off, and you can get the information you want out, and what's important. So it's not quite as scripted, but it's much more so than where I was at previously. And I do have to do some writing, there's no question about it, teases and headlines and things like that. And a lot of that stuff is not something that you pick up, overnight. It takes a while and a lot of practice and a lot of years of doing it to get to the point where you can, tease a story efficiently and make somebody, at home say, "Hey, maybe I want to stick around a little bit longer and watch that." So.
After almost 30 years in doing this, what kind of characteristics do you think a good producer needs to have? What kind of things? Is it that idea to, like you said, this macro, this ability to see the bigger picture and how everything fits in?
I think there's a large part of that. Yeah, you definitely got to have, if I'm dealing with an hour broadcast, I've got 9, 10, I don't know, just off the top of my head, 9 or 10 ideas I want to cram into that hour. And so you've got to start thinking, okay, what's the best way to present this? What's the best way that's going to be visually appealing to the viewer and still informative and give them everything that they need to know to, face their day. So, you have to have some amount of a creative element without question, And then you've also got to have a practical element, because you've also got to be able to figure, okay, how am I going to pull this off, and make it look, decent as well. You can't just throw it against the wall and say, "Oh, let's see what happens." You've got to have some amount of foresight and being able to plan it out.
Did you ever have those days where you felt like I'm surprised I was able to pull it off?
That happens almost every day. There's days we'll be sitting in the control room after a show and we'll be like, we actually did that, I mean, and we're like, it looked pretty good, I mean, there are mornings you walk in and you think, okay, I'm not sure how we're going to do this today, but we'll take a stab at it. Let's try something new, or let's, try so-and-so's idea and see what happens. And if it comes off, looking pretty good, we're like, okay, we'll stick that one in the on the back burner and hang on to it. Maybe we'll use it again in the future. So it's a lot of trial and error without question. I mean, but then at the same rate, you also have your own set of tricks that have worked over the years, and you keep going back to those time and time again as well, because you can get results from things like that.
Well, it makes me think, are the challenges that you've had in live television sort of the joys as well? Just the fact that, when you overcome a challenge, there's a satisfaction that comes along with, of course, the adrenaline rush or whatever you may feel, but there's the feeling that you were able to overcome that hill that was in front of you that day.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's always that sense of satisfaction when you've managed to do a program and do it well, and for me the biggest satisfaction is when I can go in and do a show and think, yeah, okay, we did all right with it. It wasn't, it's not going to win an Emmy by any stretch, but it was a pretty respectable show. And then somebody else comes up to you later on and says, hey man, I loved what you did with X, Y, and Z. And you think to yourself, you're like, wow, that was pretty cool. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but somebody else appreciated what I did. So that's always, satisfying without a doubt.
You mentioned working at the Home Shopping Network, and that idea, the feeling of working with no script would be unnerving to many people well, in many ways. I mean, for me, somebody that's been involved with sports productions, I love that part of not knowing what was going to happen within a sporting event. Is somebody going to score, or is there going to be a turnover? Do we need to get out right away? That is, I appreciated not having always the boundaries that you would have in a traditional 30-minute newscast, for example. Was there sort of a creative part to that part of production?
There was, but there wasn't at the same rate.
Okay.
My position at HSN is, as a producer, is pretty much strictly execution, because everything that airs in a given hour, say I'm doing an hour of electronics or something, the products, the timing as to how many minutes an item will receive on air, everything comes directly from our product and merchandising teams. We don't, as a producer, I don't script out, or I don't plan out a show like that. All I do is pick up my flow sheets, when I walk in, and whatever time I'm on, I'm in the booth, and we are just, one item after the next, going down the list, basically executing. Now, as a producer, you have the freedom to maybe short time an item or extend it a little bit, depending on how it's performing. Because as a producer at HSN, you're sitting basically in a control room with monitors all around you, but I'm getting sales information from, our sales department right down to the actual minute, showing me how many dollars a specific item is generating every minute. So I mean, based on that, you can, predict how well it's going to do, or if it's going to fail, and whether or not you might extend the time by a minute or two, or short time it, something like that. So we can, make timing adjustments and things like that. But otherwise, you're pretty much, by the book. You've just got to, follow your marching orders.
So let's talk about you've already kind of mentioned a little bit about the new job here with AccuWeather. What kind of, thing do you look forward to going into the job every day and saying, this is really a great part, and I'm really glad I got this job?
It's really funny, because this, like I said, has a lot of similarities to doing a daily newscast. And the last time I did a daily newscast was in 2008. So, the better part of 15, 20 years at this point. It's hard to believe it's been that long. But, I mean, I left TV news for a specific set of reasons, and really had no interest in ever going back. And when this position came available, it really, I had to really sit and consider. I'm like, this is going to be, I mean, it's not a newscast. It's, but weather is generally in most markets a critical part of a newscast. But in the way that we present our programming here at AccuWeather, it is almost like a newscast. It really is. And it's got so many similarities to working a daily newscast that it's scary. But the nice thing is, I'm dealing with a subject that affects every single person on the planet in some way, shape, or form every day of their lives, and that right there kind of drives home the importance as to what we're doing here. And I mean, and at the same rate, we're delivering information that's going to save somebody's life, if used properly. So it's fulfilling in that respect, and knowing, the level of importance of what we're doing here. And honestly, I had this conversation earlier this morning with somebody that popped into the control room while I was on air. And I said, I never thought I would say it, but I'm actually enjoying being back in the chair after all these years. I said, I'm having fun for the first time in a long time. And that was really a good feeling. I mean, it's really good to be sitting in that chair and knowing you're having a good time and you're doing important stuff too. So that was a lot of fun.
And well, first of all, I'm really happy that is the experience for you. And I know that can be, after almost 30 years in the business of seeing changes in technology, seeing changes in how the audience responds to the media and everything. I just wondered, Jay, do you have any feeling about the future, for a young person considering, how do I prepare myself for what, do I need to focus more within news? What kind of skills do I need to have?
I think for somebody that wants to go into news particularly, regardless of whether you want to be a producer or a reporter or an anchor or even a camera guy, well, maybe not so much for camera, but I think the importance for any of the other positions is you need to learn to write. I mean, that is so important in what I do on a daily basis. And I never thought it would be as important as it is. But, and I still don't consider myself the world's greatest writer. I mean, granted, I've evolved a lot, but it's taken me 30 years to get to where I was at. I would probably, want to burn a script that I wrote 30 years ago now if I were to see it today. But it is so important. And it's the very last thing I ever thought that I would need to worry about when I came into Western as a radio jock. So yeah, there's that element. There's also the other thing I would say is you need to keep an open mind. I mean, it is so important to be willing to entertain all the ideas that are on the table, not just one specific, train of thought. I mean, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, and it's that way when you're covering a story. You have no idea how a story is going to develop and how it's going to turn out until you see it through, basically. It's the same way in building a newscast. I start with an idea every day as to what I want to do. What actually goes on air a lot of times is total opposite. So, I mean, it's just, because it's not just me. I mean, I'm as a producer, I'm kind of one of the driving forces behind it, right. But I'm also working with a team of reporters, anchors, or in this case, meteorologists, where I'm at now, video editors and graphics ops, everyone. So it's not just a one person effort, it's a collaborative effort, and everyone's going to have a say as to what they think needs to be done and how to do it. So you've got to weigh the options and be willing to make compromises at times. And, it's just keeping an open mind, really, like I said, is such a critical tool to have in your belt, really is.
And if you were going to consider hiring a young person, much like you were hired out of college, what would you, looking back, say to that young person? You've given some things, but to be a team player, this idea of being adaptable, what one little advice would you give?
you've got to have just that innate curiosity, that that drive to find out what makes something tick. What do I got to do to what's the word I'm looking for? But like I was saying, that drive to just, like I said, continue to learn, to continue to question things, to seek out answers, whether you like them or not. I mean, because you're definitely not going to always like the answer you get. But the willingness to at least entertain different ideas and like I said, be flexible more than anything else.
Well, Jay, you've got 30 years of being a wonderful storyteller. And I'm very happy for your success, and hopefully someday in the future you'll be back in Macomb and back to the WIU campus, and we can catch up like on old days.
I look forward to it.
And thanks to all the viewers out there for watching and listening. If you want to be a guest on the show, make sure to just send me an email. We want to hear from our alums, and we hope that you continue and listen and appreciate everyone's support. So until next week, stay safe, take care, and God bless.